welcome to the aviary. The aviary, I don't know if you know this, it's the best building at the zoo. This is one of the zoo's oldest installations. It was built in 1936 and 1937. It was renovated in 1998. So that was the most recent big renovation. We've changed things here and there over the years, but the largest renovation was in 98. That was kind of like what happened to the aquarium a few years ago. What's really neat about that renovation is the next year, this building won an AZA exhibit award, which is really nice, especially because the bird exhibits usually don't win those awards. Usually, the amazing tiger exhibits and bear exhibits. So for a bird exhibit to win an award like that, was really, really neat. So we can start, we're going to walk through the building, and at the very end, when we get to the koala, we're going to meet one of the bird keepers, and it's the keeper that takes care of the koala and the sloths, the paca, the mammals at the end of the building, and he's going to tell us a little bit about those animals.
Was this always for birds then?
Yes, it was always for birds. The mammals recently that we've added to the building, that's kind of a new thing.
What was the reason for that?
Well,
Go ahead.
Because we're in the school right now. No, not sweet. Ew, what's that smell? Look at this. Oh, it's a wall. Now, I don't know what is it. We take a picture of the sheep. You don't have a smell.
System, so it's just part of the message.
Could he have ever done
No, right now they function just as mammal exhibits. Yeah. Maybe one day we'll try something like that. It gets a little tricky when they're in the same exhibit and have different needs.
Look at that.
Yeah. Isn't that nice? That's actually a mold of one of my feet.
I thought it was a monster.
If I'm going to talk as loudly as I can, but if anyone's having trouble hearing me, just tell me. So the first exhibit here, originally this was it was called the Backyard Bird Exhibit, and basically what it was is, you know how you have bird feeders in your backyard that you put seed in. It was encouraging natives to come, and the native birds still come because there's still bird feed out there. But several years ago, this was changed to when we got the cassowary. And when the cassowary got here, they were only a few months old, so they were like this tall. So this was their original exhibit before they moved to their permanent exhibits.
Is there more than one of those over there?
There is. It's a male and female. The thing with cassowary is, now these two are raised together. They're brother and sister. When they're raised together, they could tolerate each other a little bit, but once they reach sexual maturity, it's not going to work. Cassowary are very territorial and solitary in the wild. They only really encounter each other during breeding season. And even then, it's like they do what they need to do, and then the female leaves the male. The male is, an interesting fact about cassowary. And does everyone know when I say cassowary, which birds I'm talking about? A really neat fact with cassowary, it's the male that's completely 100% responsible for all of the egg incubation and all of the chick rearing, which is unique in birds.
He builds a nest too, I read.
Yeah, he builds it, he makes the scrape in the ground, collects some nesting material. The female lays the eggs, and then she goes off and finds another male. She's promiscuous. And he's the one that has to, and these chicks, he's with, for up to 9 months, he's with the chicks until he kind of says, hey.
So is that the male out here? Does the female have the same bright coloring and everything?
Yeah, they look similar. The female is a lot bigger. The female cassowary are a lot bigger. She has bigger wattles, her casque is bigger. So that's how you could tell them apart. The male is usually in the yard in the back.
Now, are they dangerous to the keepers here, like they're dangerous in the wild?
Yeah, so it's all protected contact, like how the mammal keepers would work with, one of the leopards or the elephants. We don't work in with the cassowary. They're shift trained. So when we need to go clean their exhibit, they come inside their barn, and then they get shifted outside when we're done. In zoos, people used to go in with cassowary and stuff, but there's been accidents.
Not a good idea.
You can't predict the behavior of a wild animal. No matter, for years it could behave one way, and then one day decide something
Do
different.
they use their feet, their legs to attack?
Yes, that's their main weapon. because they have very, very strong legs. They're fast runners. They're not as fast as ostrich, which could run about, their top speed is 43 miles per hour. An ostrich, it's the fastest running bird in the world. The second fastest is the cassowary, but they top out at about 35 miles per hour. So very strong legs, they're astonishing jumpers, and that inner toenail is razor sharp. It's about 5 inches long, razor sharp, so they'll jump up and they kick it out straight like that. So what you're seeing here, this is now, there's some Eurasian birds in here. You'll notice the ducks, those aren't native ducks. Those are called falcated ducks. And they're kind of the Eurasian equivalent of the gadwall, which you'll find here in North America. And we raised 8 on exhibit this year. So the female hatched the chicks, raised the ducklings right on this exhibit all by herself. We also have demoiselle cranes, which are the gray birds. Those are the smallest species of crane in the world. And there's also red-breasted geese in there. And so that's the birds that are intermediate size between the ducks and the cranes. They're called red-breasted geese. They're the world's smallest goose. They're from Siberia, and they're endangered. And Toledo's, we raised 4 this year. It was the first time the species had ever been propagated at the Toledo Zoo. Yeah.
So are the brown, black, and white ones the males, and the plain brown ones the females of the same species?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because ducks in the northern hemisphere, typically you can tell the difference between male and female. The time of year that they're around here and we're seeing them when they're migrating, they're already, we call it dimorphic. Dimorphic means the male and females they have physical differences that you can tell them apart. Right now, the male falcated ducks are molting into their breeding plumage. So every species of North American duck and goose, or northern hemisphere duck and goose, the males have different plumages throughout the year. They have what's called an eclipse plumage that lasts several months after breeding season. And they look almost identical to the females. But
that colorful one is not the same as the ones that are in the water.
The colorful one that's one of the geese. And then the ones in the water, you could tell the males are the ones that look more gray. When they're in breeding plumage, they're completely gray and they have a white collar around their neck. But they just went through a period where they looked like the females. There is a ecological reason for that. And it comes back to like what we were saying about the cassowary. In the northern hemisphere, female ducks are the ones that have to do all the egg incubation and chick rearing, so they have to be able to camouflage. The drakes, or the males, they don't do anything with chick rearing, so it's just their job to look pretty and get a mate. After breeding season, though, it's time to get new feathers. There's a lot of wear and tear in breeding season. So they molt, and they molt all their flight feathers at the same time, so they're flightless. So it's like, oops, can't be flightless and look so pretty, because then you're literally a sitting duck for a predator. So they become more drab. They turn brown, they turn gray, they could camouflage better. Once they regrow their flight feathers, then they molt back into breeding plumage, and they go through the cycle again. Sometimes I explain it to people. It's like, during breeding season, you want to look real sharp, and then after breeding season, you could change into your sweatpants and dirty t-shirt. So that's what the ducks are kind of doing. Yeah, it really quacks me up, these ducks. Sorry.
So now that you have this top covered over, do you have any predator problems, hawks or owls or raccoons coming in?
We don't have predator problems in this exhibit, but you'll see that there's a barn back there. The birds get shifted into the barn at night for their protection, and so they don't fly away. We clip their wings, which is it's really like kind of getting a haircut. It doesn't hurt the birds, and we only take enough flight feathers so they can't really get lit.
So when this batch of babies and mama and daddy, if they start breeding, you're going to have more ducks than you know what to do with.
Yeah.
And having raised ducks, I know how that can get. Obviously, you're not going to eat them, so do you turn them to? Well, we used to. I raised some for me. But then, do you then trade them to other zoos?
Yeah, actually, 3 of the 8 offspring are already they're going to Akron Zoo. So we breed, when we're breeding, the question was, what do you do when, you have these ducks that are really prolific, they like to breed. Is there a situation where you wind up with more offspring than you could really, have a plan with? So we can manage their breeding. If we don't want a certain species to propagate, what we do is, you can't stop them from nesting and laying an egg, but what you can do is you could give them a fake egg. So that's what, say next year, we say, whoa, hey, Chuck, we already have 11 falcated ducks, are you crazy, you want us to raise more of these? What we do is, we let the female lay. Once she has her clutch, we take the eggs and give her, before they start developing, and we give her wooden eggs. And most birds readily accept artificial eggs, as long as it's relatively the same weight and the same color. Some birds are tricky because, bird eggs are diverse, some have patterning, some are different colors. So as long as it looks relatively the same and is the same weight or a similar weight, they usually accept it. And then they'll sit on those eggs, and then you can take them away. If they relay, you do the same thing.
Do you just destroy the eggs you take away then?
Yeah, so we try to use them. The herp department, which a lot of times they look for novel food items to feed different reptiles. They may take fresh eggs to feed Gila monsters or something like that. Yeah. We also use them for education. Well, it's called blowing them out, where you take the inside part out of the eggshell without destroying the eggshell, and education can use them.
One of the cranes looks like it has a much shorter wing on the right side. Is that, it was a curve, or was it done that way on purpose now?
That was on purpose, so they can't leave the exhibit. Yeah. Yeah, you could see the asymmetry when they open their wings. You could tell which wing is missing the flight feathers.
So you only put one
Now,
wing
your
in there?
cassowaries, would you not want those to breed because they're brother siblings?
Yeah, so there's I'll talk about just real quick like what an SSP is. It's a term you may have heard. It's in AZA zoos, we manage certain species are managed like on a genetic level. So SSP is Species Survival Plan. And what that is, every year the manager for that species comes up with the breeding and transfer plan, and also what's recommended to breed. So right now we don't have a recommendation to breed our cassowary because they are siblings. But in the future, if we swap, we get a different male or female, then we would likely have breeding recommendations.
So you always would keep them separated so there's nothing.
Right, yeah, we wouldn't even attempt introducing them and breeding them because they're not recommended to
Well,
breed.
but you didn't want to breed them if they were together.
Yeah.
I want to breed.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they don't, the birds don't read the book that says, hey, you're not allowed to, yeah. Yep.
I'll give you a call.
So the next birds I want to talk about are our Rhinoceros hornbills. Now, this is a relatively new exhibit for them. They've only been in this exhibit, it's been less than 2 years already. If you're familiar with aviary, you may have seen them before in the exhibit right across there. It's actually by design more of a toucan exhibit because it's long and not that high. These hornbills, we noticed, they like to, they want to get off the ground to nest, so we thought this would give them a lot more vertical space, and the exhibits department made that tree that's in there. That's an artificial tree, and it has cavities in it, and that's for the female to use. We have a male, this is a breeding pair, they're recommended to breed. You can tell the difference between the male and female a couple of different ways. The male overall is bigger, but his cast is a lot bigger and more curved, and their eye color is different. The male has red eyes, and the female has light blue eyes. So that's how you can tell them apart. Hornbills are unique for a couple reasons, but one of the weirdest things that a group of birds does, the hornbills do, there's over 70 species in the world, they're all from Asia or Africa, and and every species is what we call a cavity nester. So the male and female pair up and they look for a hollow tree cavity to nest in that was already existing. They don't burrow it out. It's, you know, a limb fell off and left a cavity. The female, once they decide on a nesting site, the male seals the female inside that cavity using mud, using mashed up fruit, using fecal matter, and she stays in there, lays the eggs, hatches the chicks, and she doesn't come out until she's ready. And then they seal the chicks in there for another month, and then the chicks break out when they're ready to fledge. So she spends a few months sealed inside that tree cavity with the chicks. They're very careful when they seal it. The male leaves just a small hole, small enough for him to pass her food while she's incubating.
Is that true?
Sorry?
Males wear their tail feathers down.
From
trying to
feeding,
feed
yeah,
down.
because when they're, a lot of times they have to cling to the side of that tree. So yeah, you could tell if they're a pair is nesting because you'll see a male with a tattered tail. So the only one other thing I'll mention about the hornbills is you kind of got to figure, well, why would that, how could that breeding kind of strategy develop? What was the ecological reason for that? As you can imagine, being inside the chamber, that's, you know, you're protected from the elements, the weather, predators. Well, the actual reason why that happened is because these birds are, hornbills are the only group of birds that are truly monogamous. You may hear things like penguins, mate for life, or monogamous, flamingos. These birds that nest in these big breeding colonies, they're all, there may be a pair together, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the egg that they have. There's things that we call extra pair populations that take place. So you don't actually know who's with who in those big breeding colonies. There's been genetic studies done that have shown stuff like this. Now hornbills, the female, if she's locked in, she's sealed into that nest cavity, that male is spending 100% of his daily activity budget collecting food for himself, the female, and the chicks if the eggs hatch. He doesn't have no time to do that with 2 or 3 other females in different nests. He is devoting all of his time to that female. So really, that female, that was a way of ensuring the fidelity of that male.
Was this pair bred and nested in that tree?
We haven't successfully bred them yet, but they've been here less than 2 years, so we're hoping that with a little time, they'll breed. We have seen her putting her head in one of the cavities, and you know, inspecting the nest site, so that's a little encouraging, but hopefully within the next few years we'll be successful. Yeah, they do have a breeding season. So during breeding season, we give them different types of clay, mud, and we start giving them figs, real pulpy food items that they could smash up and use. In the past, they have smeared some of that stuff on the nest cavity, which is a good sign. So we'll see. I think they're a good pair. I think eventually we'll get there.
Is there any purpose for the horn?
Yeah. So very good question. What's the purpose of that horn? You know. Now think about the cassowary. They also have a similar appendage. We call it a casque, is what it's called. And the casque in a rhinoceros hornbill has a much different function than a casque in a cassowary. If you open it up, you'll see that these hornbills, that's actually hollow. It's made out of keratin, which is the same stuff your fingernails and hair are made out of. But it's completely hollow. It's actually a resonating chamber. These birds, if you ever hear them vocalize, they have big booming calls that they're trying to broadcast, you know, through the jungle, through Borneo. So now cassowary have that casque, and you may think, all right, well maybe there's a similar kind of thing going on in the cassowary casque. It's not the case. If you open a cassowary casque, it's not hollow. It's actually full of wet, spongy material. But cassowary have much different vocalization than these. Cassowary vocalizations are very low frequency, almost like elephant vocalizations that you don't necessarily hear it, you feel the vibration. So the current theory is in a cassowary casque, It kind of acts as like a receiver of those low frequency shaking and vocalizations, helps them receive it from other animals and interpret it. But really, it's mostly unknown, but that's the most recent hypothesis.